The full control station comprises a pen and tablet, keyboard, and a small handheld unit known as the RAT. Nearly all Paintbox operations are executed using the tablet and pen. Placing the pen near to the tablet's surface makes a cursor appear. We can quickly establish the active picture area by moving the cursor around the edges of the picture. Keeping the pen a millimetre or so above the surface and moving from the centre picture area to the side, to the left or right, switches on the menu. Repeating the movement switches it off. Operators may well prefer a lazy wrist grip for precise control of the pen's position and pressure. Be careful not to press on the pen, otherwise it may leave a mark on the picture. Pink boxes show what is selected. Functions can be selected by simply pressing the required box. At the left, there are listed the main menus. And note that the display to the right changes to show what's available within that function. For the colour palette, move the pen from the picture area down. Again, repeating the movement switches off the palette. Swiping upwards places the palette at the top. Subsequent palettes and menus will now be displayed there until the pen is once more swiped to the bottom area. The pink boxes are active, the grey ones are available for selection, blue boxes are in general for information only. If in doubt, tap them and check. Green boxes are for numeric entries. To draw, the menu and palette must not be displayed. So selecting a mid-sized brush, apply a little pressure to the pen and then the picture area. Having selected another pen size, we can draw again. We can look at all the various pen sizes available. Note also that the lighter we press, the more translucent the paint is. It mixes with the background. Pressing harder, the paint becomes more opaque. The palette allows us to mix colours. Here's a starter pack of paint pots. But as you will see, you can put any colour you like in here. To select a colour, lightly tap the one you want. Notice the bar at the right changes to show successful selection. This area is for colour mixing. Our first colour can be brushed in, another selected and lightly brushed over the first. This now produces an infinite range of mixes between the two original colours. So far, we've only deposited paint in the palette mixing area by moving the pen. If we push the pen down and lift it without moving, it will pick up the colour. This can then be used to paint with, or by pressing any colour box and holding the pen down for a moment, the colour can then be entered into that box. Removing the palette, any colour can be used to paint with. But whilst the palette is showing, colour can be picked up from anywhere, including the picture itself. Once again, these colours can immediately be used for painting, mixing or saving. Whilst learning, you may unintentionally overwrite the colours in the palette. The basic palette can be restored by reselecting the current main menu to produce the top-level menu. The Restore PAL box will rewrite the basic 20 colours to the palette, leaving the remainder untouched. To clean the palette mixing area, press and hold the selected colour indicator at the right. The mixing area can thus be changed to any colour you require. There are 3 basic types of brush available. So far, we've just been using paint. Chalk gives a textured look, which may prove useful for illustrative work. Again, chalk is available in 5 sizes, and the pen is pressure sensitive. Notice how a graduated colour change can be drawn by progressively picking the colours from the screen. Let's now clear the screen. Wipe Pick will fill the picture with whatever colour is in the adjacent box. If we place black into the box and hit white pick, you see Confirm appears. This is a safety feature, useful for newcomers to the paintbox, that appears whenever what you're about to do is likely to overwrite the existing picture. Tap Confirm and the picture will wipe to black. Or again, if we want grey, it's the same action. Airbrush is just like the real thing, but without the splatters and running ink. Very smooth. The percentage flow rate can be adjusted to suit the style required. Let's spend a moment to see the methods by which numbers can be entered into the paintbox. All methods start by hitting the green number box, which turns pink to show it's active and produces a keypad at the right. One way to define the number is to tap it out on the keypad, see it appear just above, and then tap the number box to load it, which will also return the box to green. You may prefer to save pen movement, so having tapped out the number, hit the blue bar above. This enters the number, but leaves the box open for change. For more precise changes, the ink or deck boxes can be used to alter the number by the value in the blue bar. If numbers are not entered, the change will be by 1 only. Lastly, a quick way to enter numbers is simply to move the pen with pressure applied. Up or right is positive, down or left is negative. So now we can see the effect of 100% airbrush against, say, 70%. Notice that the airbrush will continue adding paint if it's held still. Under Graphics, we have our electronic geometry set. Remember that the paint style, brush size and colour will affect the operation of graphics, so select what is required. Now, lines can be drawn by tapping the pen to establish one end, moving the pen away, and tapping again to define the other end. To adjust the first point, simply lift the pen out of proximity and start again. Normally, however, keep the pen in proximity with the tablet. Lines can be connected together. In this case, the end of one line makes the beginning of the next. HV only constrains the lines to horizontal or vertical only. Of course, controls can be combined to bring, say, HV only, connected, and lines together. Now let's look at rectangles. Initially, they'll be open and drawn in the thickness, colour, and type of brush selected. Notice the blue box, which shows that we still have paint selected. The first tap fixes one corner, and the pen then defines the position of the opposite corner, which is confirmed by another tap. The rectangle is then complete. Again, the operation can be abandoned by lifting the pen out of proximity. For solid colour, solid must be selected. Using square, the first tap defines the centre and the second the edge. Squares or rectangles can be graduated from the colour on the pen to the colour in the grad box. The rectangle is then defined as before. Notice the graduation can be reversed by defining the top and bottom of the rectangle in opposite order. Just in case you forget what's happening, the start pen colour is always shown by the guide box, visible as the rectangle is drawn. Circles may be open or solid. Like the square, the centre is defined first, and the second tab defines the edge. Keeping the pen in proximity remembers the centre, so that concentric circles can be drawn quickly. Lifting the pen allows a new circle to be defined. Of course, circles can be solid too. Ellipses operate in a similar way. Here, defining the centre first, the box shows the extent of the major and minor axes. Again, they can be solid. Fill is used to flood an area with colour. It operates by looking for a change in luminance to define the boundaries. So filling a flat area works well. But it's not so effective over an area such as a graduation, where the luminance is changing. There are other ways of doing this. The menu on the right controls the stencil. For convenience, it's available in all menus. It has two uses, one as a masking medium, the other to define areas of picture for cutting out. We can draw in stencil mode and apply it over the picture using any brush. By default, it's shown in red. But this may be changed to any color that you require. Stencil can also be removed when necessary. Very useful for correcting any errors. Or added again. Now, Use Stencil allows the stencil to mask the paint sprayed by our airbrush. If you want to see the stencil, Display Sten will show it as a visual guide while working. We can use the stencil the other way round. Reverse Sten changes it from positive to negative. So now we can paint in the area that was previously protected. A word of warning. Stencil can be displayed without it being in use, and this could easily lead to a mistake. The stencil only works when it's in use. There's a difference between it being in use and just displaying it. So much for the basic principles of stencil. Now let's remove the whole stencil with Wipe Sten and create a new one using a graphics solid circle. Now we can work through the stencil using an airbrush with a chosen color. Reversing the stencil allows us to work within the stencil area without disturbing the protected area. In this way, for example, it's quick to add light and shade. Now let's look quickly at the use of stencil as a vehicle for cutting things out. Going to Paste Up, Cut, Picture and Stencil, and swiping off, we can now tap down to define a box around our circle. Swiping off and placing the pen back in the picture area, we see that the pen now has the cutout circle on its tip. Tapping down will tack it to the picture, while Stick adds it to the picture permanently. Operations with cutouts are more fully described in the Paste Up section. At this stage, we may well wish to save the image. So now we look at the library. Here we wish to save a picture. We should give it a title which can be entered from the tablet or from the keyboard as preferred. Titles should be composed carefully, as they are the means for finding pictures in the future. Note the availability of upper, lower, and other character sets. It's important to know that when searching for a title, the system examines each word and will match the first letters found. This gives great flexibility in using the library. If saving a series of related items, it may help to use the ink facility to number each one. Another useful device are the arrows, which allow us to quickly toggle between the last 3 titles used. With the required title entered, tapping End saves the picture to disk. We can use Find, Picture to recall that image. With no title defined, it will find all pictures. Here are the titles of the first 12, and we can browse them. Down takes us to the next 12 images. Up goes back to the 12 before, and so on. Tap the Browse images to fetch them at full size. Images can also be fetched from the title display. Old and New are 2 temporary picture stores. This picture we'll save to Old, and this second picture to New. We can check what's in the store simply by tapping Old or New. Restore Pick will load the old or new picture, whichever is selected, onto the screen. Old and New have several applications. First, they can be used to store work as it progresses. If any mistake is made, such as this red paint, then the previously stored stage can quickly be restored. If only a small area of the work is wrong, then Restore, under the Painting menu, allows us to paint back just the chosen area for correction. Besides correcting images, Restore allows us to blend 2 images together to make eye-catching composites. Of course, there's no limit to how many images can be added, and we can use any brush style, including airbrush, to create the desired effect. Zoom is available to help with the detailed work. Tapping the up arrow allows us to zoom in, the down arrow to zoom out. Press and hold the arrow to move in or out quickly. At maximum zoom, 6 pixels fill the screen. The white rectangle represents the whole of the picture. The grey area is the part we're actually seeing. We can move around the big picture by pressing on the rectangle and moving the pen, or by pressing and moving the pen on the picture itself. Be careful not to place the pen in the menu area. Detailed painting and other operations can be carried out on the zoomed picture. Magnify gives only a 2:1 expansion, but effectively provides a second size range of brushes. Wash can be used to paint new color over an object without changing its luminance detail. So, picking a blue, for instance, the color of the picture can effectively be changed. Care should be taken to avoid bright washes, since although these will be acceptable in the component environment of the paint box, they could possibly exceed the specifications of PAL or NTSC. If in doubt, the colour can be darkened down a little for a more subtle effect. Here again, the red can be toned down. For an example of shade, we'll use these two circles of colour. Normally, the green paints like this, but with shade on, only the luminance value is painted. Here's the luminance of the red, a little darker. Shade affects only the luminance values, leaving the chrominance unchanged. So by using a lighter colour, we can create a lighter version of the red. Or by using a darker one, create a darker shade. This can be used as a quick method of changing luminance without any further colour mixing. We'll use these lines to examine smooth, crisp and blur. Smooth gives a slight softening to an object. By taking the menu on and off again, we can increase the effect by a factor of 2. Here we'll apply crisp once. And a second time to this line. Finally, blur once. And twice. Now, if we examine these, we can see the slight softening of smooth and the extra effect of the second level. This line has been crisped once, while this has had double the amount applied. Finally, here's the strong effect of the single blur and the completely blurred last line. Using this on a picture, we can see that the center is quite clear, but the surroundings are rather out of focus. So applying crisp to the outer region helps to increase the definition of these objects. Of course, it could be reapplied for even more definition. Blur can often be useful whilst assembling composite images, when we want the background to look out of focus in comparison to the sharpness of the foreground object. Here's a frame grabbed from a tape. And as is often the case with video, there's field flicker. The flicker shows the movement between the two fields that make up the frame. To eliminate the flicker, choose field 1 or 2 and paint over the flickering area. This removes the flicker and reduces just this area to field resolution, rather than degrading the whole frame. Here we might want field 2 only. Grids are set in the graphics menu and are useful to aid the layout of items on the screen. First, we must define the grid. We can divide the screen into 4 by 4, as is now shown by the movement of the box. Here, for example, is an 8 by 12 grid. The grid can automatically be drawn with any brush style. Square defines a square grid that takes the height as the size of the 4 sides, with positions calculated from the top left corner. Centered takes the center of each of the previous rectangles to make a new grid. Up to now, all grids have referred to the whole picture. But by swiping off and defining an area of the picture, we can create a grid that refers directly to that area. So now the defined area is divided into 4 by 8, and this can be applied to the whole screen. But if we hit Whole Pick, once again the grid refers back to the whole picture. So much for defining the grid. Now let's use it. In the same way as a stencil has no effect until it's turned on, grid only comes into play when Use Grid has been activated. If we now select Graphics, Rectangles, we can produce rectangles aligned to our grid structure. Operation can be limited to horizontal or vertical only. Overlay is an automated way of producing stencils based on the luminance values of the image. This is black and white artwork grabbed into the Paintbox from a rostrum camera. The contrast range of the overlay is set by these 2 boxes, by default black and white, to define the opaque to transparent range of the stencil. Overlay can be applied to the whole picture or just a selected part of it. Switching it on, we can see that the stencil is not very clean. There's clearly some visible in the white area where we want none. This is because the white that was cameraed in is in fact only a grey. We can pick up the tones both from the paper and also the dark area. Let's see what happens if we substitute grey for the white in the overlay box. Finally, we'll use the black from the logo as well. Now we can examine the 3 results. The first has stencil in the white area, but in the black it's not solid enough. In the second example, where we used the paper color, the background white is clear of stencil as we want it, but the foreground black is still not solid enough. In the third, where we entered the colors from both the background and the foreground, we've created the stencil that we want. So we'll keep these luminance values loaded and treat the whole image. Wiping away the picture, we can see the stencil alone. There'll be small areas that may need a little touch-up, but very quickly we've produced a stencil that we can now use. In use, we can apply colours through it with an airbrush, or a rectangle of colour. Reversing the stencil allows us to fill the background. Finally, we'll save this stencil into the library. This operation is exactly the same as for pictures, except that after Save, we tap Stencil instead, and then give it a title, followed by End. We can check this through by finding the stencil. There it is in the Browse display. Here's another grabbed image. The field mode in the Effects menu is unlike that found under Painting, in that its area can only be defined by a rectangle. This is quick and easy to use. To illustrate the use of Colour Map, we'll first transfer another picture from the library and save it into the old picture file. Colour Map assigns the luminance of the picture to whatever colours are set in the palette. Left to right corresponds with black to white picture values. As a simple example, we'll just use 3 colours, black, white and grey, and process the whole picture, like this. You can see where the original colours have been replaced with those from the palette according to the luminance values. We can restore the original picture and experiment with another palette. The use of airbrush gives a softer border to colour changes in the picture, bringing out more detail. And consequently, there is a completely different effect. Mosaic will divide the picture into rectangular tiles of colour. The green H and V boxes define the number of horizontal and vertical tiles. Here we can reduce the picture into 25 blocks of colour. Or again, with 40 by 60 tiles, a finer pattern is produced. The numbers can be changed to achieve the desired effect. As with other effect modes, either the whole picture or a rectangular area can be chosen for treatment. Note that the H and V numbers then apply to the area of the rectangle and not to the whole picture, so a different pattern is produced. One final note, all these effects functions can be used with stencil to limit the area to which the effect is applied. Within Paste Up are the facilities to cut out a portion or the whole of the picture, logo or title, and stick it onto a background. Using this picture and selecting Cut, Picture, All will cut out the whole picture. After swiping off and then tapping the pen in the picture area, we see that the cutout picture can be positioned by moving the pen around. Swiping off after Cut Picture allows us to define an area to cut out. On tapping the pen down to confirm the second corner, the boxed area is cut out, and once again it will appear as if on the end of the pen. Clearing the background picture, we can explore some of the styles with which the cutout can be displayed. For example, Flip, Tumble, which can be used together. Original will revert the cutout to the size and position from which it was originally cut. To move the cutout, you can either swipe off to get rid of the menu and move the cutout around the screen with the movement of the pen, or you can use these statistics. This background picture helps explain what is happening. The screen is divided with X in the horizontal and Y in the vertical axes. Values can be positive or negative. Changing the X value moves the cutout horizontally. Entering a value of 0 moves the cutout to the horizontal center of the screen. As usual with Paintbox, there's often more than one way of doing something. So another way to move the cutout is to activate the box and then slide the pen horizontally in the screen area. This is directly changing the value of the X parameter, and the results can be seen immediately. Notice too that the cutout becomes transparent, useful for positioning accurately over a background. Of course, entering a Y value of 0 centers the cutout. Angle controls rotation. The effect is seen immediately as the pen is slid to alter the numbers. When the pen is lifted, the cutout is swiftly rendered in full resolution. The size too can be changed. The absolute limit on expansion is 999%. The aspect ratio of the cutout can be changed by separate alteration of the X or Y size values. So the images can be stretched or compressed. That concludes a quick review of some of the facilities for PasteUp. Now we'll construct a new cutout using the logo we processed earlier. First, we can produce a quick overlay and use that stencil to put another color through, maybe a graduated rectangle. Now we're ready to cut the logo out. Having returned to PasteUp, note that first we always see the last used cutout. Don't be concerned with this, however. Proceed to cut picture and stencil together by describing the area wanted with the box cursor. It's worth using this as it limits the amount of data used for the cutout, so making it faster to handle as well as occupying less storage space on the disk. So now we see only the parts of the picture revealed through the stencil. Now we can review the different styles available for sticking down the cutout. Of course, all the size, position and rotation options are still there for use as required. With outline, the edges of the cutout are stuck using the colour on the pen. Without any style selected, we just get the cutout. Next, Surround places a border of the colour in the surround box around the cutout. Notice that we always get a duplicate each time the cutout is stuck. There are several options with Solid, which produces an extended version of the cutout. First, the direction of the extension can be selected. When we hit the arrow, an array of choices is presented on the right. The colour of the solid must be entered into the box together with the length, now stick. Pick gives another method for producing a solid. This time the colour is defined by the edge of the cutout itself, leading to some spectacular effects. To complete this, we just need to switch solid off and stick again. Here we can create a cast or drop shadow. The distance from the object is set here. The direction of light source, the density and colour of the shadow can all be defined as well. Here again is a much dimmer shadow in a new direction with a longer distance from the object. Emboss will create a highlight and shadow from the shape of the cutout. By reversing the direction of light source, we can give the illusion of embossing into the screen. There are many ways open for the use of cutouts. Smear allows us to use it as if it were a brush to paint with. By changing the percentage of smear, we can control its intensity, thus giving a smoother look. The percentage value affects all other smear functions. Stamp simply allows a cutout to be quickly repeated on the image with each tap of the pen. Spacing the stamp outs evenly as the pen is moved across the tablet. The percentage value refers to the size of the cutout being used. So with 50%, we'll overlap by half each of the stamps. The smaller the percentage, the less they're spaced apart. Also note that the smear percentage controls the transparency of the stamps. Smudge uses the cutout as a brush to move or smudge the detail of a picture. The percentage can be used to soften the effect. Other features include the Sten Only box, which allows just the shape of the stencil to be used and filled with the colour on the pen. Also note that it's possible to cut the stencil shape only. In this case, it will appear again in the colour on the pen. The last option is text. But first we need to go to the library to select a font. Find Text Font, clear the bar, and now we can see the titles of the first 12 fonts available. You can select from titles, or they can be browsed. We can use up to 3 fonts at any one time. Back in Paste Up, cut Text, and we can now see the keyboard and the name of the first selected font. The arrows can be used to toggle through the 3 selected fonts. We can type from the screen or from the keyboard, whichever is preferred. Notice that fonts can be mixed if required, and that we have uppercase, lowercase and punctuation all available. Whilst in Compose, anything we do will affect the whole message, so size can be changed, or kerning altered. Spacing can be increased or decreased between words. But when we go to Edit and select a character, only that character is then changed. Size, kern, jump, etc. can all be applied to a single character. Size only changes the one letter, and kerning too can be applied on an individual basis. Jump will simply lift a character up or place it below the baseline. Flip, tumble and delete can also be applied. Once we're happy with the text, hit End and it will be cut out. Once again then, the full range of stick styles are available for outlines, shadows, etc. Most of the functions of the library will already be clear from the exercises shown. Finding and saving pictures, stencils, cutouts, grids and palettes should by now be obvious. Directory enables a print listing of the items to be made if a printer is attached to the system. Define group allows a selected range of items to be saved and found in one operation. So, for example, the style for a particular production can be handled as one group of information under one name. Overlay is particularly useful for recalling prepared black and white artwork for immediate use as a stencil. Note that this only operates from full black and full white, unlike overlay in effects, so care should be taken that the picture is already suitably processed. Archive allows items to be passed from one disk to another. In the top-level menu, the appropriate disk to read from and write to can be arranged. The pictures to be archived are then selected from the library, and the operation begins once the Confirm box is hit. A live video source can be selected in the top-level menu. You'll have noticed that in Paste Up there's a live video box which allows us to place a cutout over the video source. Selecting the box and swiping off shows the live video on the screen. Moving the pen into the screen area places the cutout over that with all the necessary keying taken care of within the paint box itself.